Life doesn't always turn out the way we want it to, and often the journey winds through paths of bitterness, depression, and despair. In this edition of God's News in the News, we talk with a man who lost part of one leg but gained a powerful outlook for life in return. Well, thank you for joining us once again for another edition of God's News in the News, current events, biblical perspective. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this time together, a special time. We learn about how life's journey doesn't always turn out the way we think, but your hand is always in it. Father, I pray that this testimony will touch people where they live, where they're at right now. And we ask that you do that in Jesus' name. Amen. But before we go much further, there are three things you need to do to get this message out to where people need to see it and get it on their feeds. That would be like, share, and subscribe on the three places. That'll make a difference. That would be Rumble, YouTube, and Facebook. And you do your part on that. Also, get notifications and then also leave comments. I'm sure this is going to generate a few comments, and it should. So anyway, you do all those things, and it'll get this on the feeds where it needs to go. The algorithm will work for us. On X, you just need to like the channel and repost. You do your part. I'll do my part. God always does his part. And so we need to stay humble so we're not building your kingdom, my kingdom, but his kingdom. And I got a sneaky suspicion that's going to happen today. So what are we talking about today? Little bit of full disclosure here. My engineer is also the person I'm going to interview. So it's a kind of an interesting story. So we're going to go ahead, and I think I've got some captions here. There we go. So God's News in the News, from bitter to better, a life journey with Josh Chandler. Well, what the heck? Let's just bring this man in here. Let me get him up there. There he is. And we'll do a side by side here because nobody really needs to see both of us here. This big.
There we go. That'll work.
Oh my goodness. So Josh, so like I said in the tease here, or at least I was talking about, you're actually the guy that engineers these things all the time. And we've known each other for quite a while, going to the same church, and a lot of journeys there. But anyway, though, Josh, you I think I trained you as a director for the church services, did I not?
Yep. Yeah, you did. Yep. It's been that, and that's been a few years ago already now. It's crazy where time flies.
Yeah. And then I started this podcasting, and I needed an engineer, and I knew you'd do a good job on it. But
I became available.
Well, you're more than just available. You have ability as well. So thank you for that.
No problem.
But just so you know here, there are more things going on than just that. We were on softball teams together, if I remember correctly. We went out and played softball. You played it better than I do.
Except for the running part. Except for the running part. But
well, let me just tell you, I was a coach for a while, and Josh has got a pretty good bat. He hit a ball out to the field, and it wasn't going to be a home run. And then you decided. I always tell people that you're a person that turns triples into singles.
Exactly.
Tell us about the time. You know what I'm talking about. Tell us about the time you hit a ball really well, but you wanted to stretch it into a double. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, I think I know what you're going on, but I was hitting it, and you could have been the base coach. I'm not sure, but I know I hit the ball, and I'm like, ooh, I think I want to take this around the corner, and you're like, don't you dare. Like, you stay right there where you're at, because I'm like, if I had gone, it was not going to end up well, and I'd have been walking back to the bench as an out, because I would have tried to stretch it, and you're like, yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, but tell us what actually happened. You did try and stretch it, and then and
Oh,
then
okay,
and
I
then
think
you
I know what
then
you're
you
talking about,
you
yeah.
tried to slide. That's the
I
part I
went
wanna get to.
yeah, I rounded 2nd, and I'm like, "Okay." I thought about it, I went around, and he's like, "You guys are sitting on the bench, like, don't you really do this?" And so I realized what you guys were thinking, probably because I was thinking the same thing. I turn around, this dude threw it in from the outfield line like he had a cannon, so I turn around, and instead of sliding, I do a full-on leap with my 6'1" big heavy self at the time, and I mean, you could have heard the earth rattle. I mean, felt it rattle more or less.
Yeah, we
But
joked
yeah, it
about it.
was yeah,
I was the coach, and I was
yep,
looking and going, "Is he really gonna do this?" And
yep.
I
In the
saw you
past
walk,
second,
and it was like the slow motion of this thing slowly playing out, and he flops, and he hits the ground, and he barely touches the base.
yep. I was like, if there's ever a time for a phantom cam, this would be it.
Anyway, though, we joked about it that, there was an earthquake, halfway around the world. The ground rumbled, but, you were
Yep.
that was
The
good.
slide hurt. More like the slide hurt around the world, even though it
Exactly,
wasn't really a slide. It
exactly,
was
yeah.
more of a belly
So we
flop. But
joked about that, but,
yeah,
that was when you were able to, you were able to run. But
yeah.
sometime after that, I believe, you started noticing that there was some pain in one of your legs, right?
Yeah, yeah, there was, I had had a knee surgery previous to that, or before that, I mean, and, so I'm like, we thought everything was good, and then unfortunately around that time, I started feeling some more pain in the leg, and I thought, "Okay, is this something I did from softball, or is this something, that's more, uh in the groundwork, that I
Mhm.
need to look at." So,
So you
um,
knew something was wrong with your left
yeah,
leg. You were feeling some pain that's not normal.
yeah. I
And
mean,
then go ahead.
it's not like it was like a just like a pulled muscle. This was something that was different that I hadn't been feeling. So,
Okay. And so at some point you knew you had to do something about it. It wasn't natural. It wasn't going away. And so you knew you had to do something. Tell us about how you got to that point and what you did shortly after that.
well, I did some normal things that people would think of, like, you do some icing, you kind of rested a little bit. I worked at this time though. I did regular job. Excuse me, I can't remember what job I was doing at that point, because the jobs that I did varied from like restaurant, and then I did some driving stuff. But yeah, I had had a job at that point, so I'm like, I could only do what I could do, like ice it, go to work on it. The only problem was work started to get worse because the problem itself got worse, and then that led to going into um, my primary doctor at the time, and then he recommended obviously go into see an orthopedic doctor because it's more in that field of orthopedic range, with the knee and the ankle and stuff like that.
Okay. And so you went through that. Now, when you went to this orthopedic surgeon, what did he tell you?
Well, he said that there could be, a number of different things. We did started out with some, like, I think this was like February at the time that I really, really started seeing the doctor for it. And in that time from like February to September, roughly September stretch somewhere, we had done tests, we'd done MRIs, we have done different injections, physical therapy, medications, just a whole bunch of different things to figure out what was going on, um, and leading to the problem. Eventually, they did what they call like a nerve block, which will give them specific areas of the nerve in your leg to figure out where there's a problem at. And I had real strong like ankle pain. The big part of it was like ankle pain, with some added knee pain all throughout, from basically the below the knee all the way down into the ankle. So
All right. So at that point, you knew something was serious. And so they were talking about nerve pain. Now I see. Now this is the thing. What people don't know is I and I'm going to tell you, so now you will know. I was with you through this journey. I wasn't actually
Oh
intimately
yeah.
involved, but you
Mhm.
played on softball. I saw you. You were in the media ministry, and that of course meant that you had to sit on a chair and to do a camera or whatever. And I
Yeah.
saw how you slowly lost the ability to use that leg. And so the I believe that this particular doctor decided there needed to be a surgery to fix this. And then tell us about how that went.
So yeah, so it was basically the main problem was a pinched nerve that I had in my leg. And there were actually a couple areas where it was pinched. It was pinched just below the knee, and then just kind of towards the middle of the leg in the calf area. Um, it was pinched, and when they did the nerve block, they saw that there was a pinch up top, closer to the knee. And so they're like, "Oh, okay. Well, we'll go in and do the surgery to unpinch this nerve, because it's not like a pinched nerve in your back where you can go to a chiropractor and the chiropractor can fix it after some work. Unfortunately, this one has to be surgically released." And so they decided, okay, this would be the best route to do. So one of the orthopedics that they thought would be the best person to do it went in there and did a nerve release, decompression, I guess they call it.
Okay. And of course, as these surgeries go, you have the surgery and then you expect everything to turn out better, but that's not what happened here. I think if I
Yeah.
recall correctly, things got worse. So, you start off with, I've got a problem in there. It's kind of affecting me. I can't do the things I want to do. I walk and it hurts. I got pain. And you go into that surgery and you come out of it thinking, okay, we took care of it. That's
Yeah.
not exactly what happened, was it?
No, I was in for a journey that I didn't know. It actually started before that. Before they did that surgery, I kind of jumped ahead a little bit. I was working at Amazon in Kenosha. I was working at the factory, and um, through this time, from that February to September, in about May, I got a job in at Amazon. Well, come to find out, I had a bigger problem than I thought, because the ankle was very, very bad. Um, and I was limping around, barely getting through. It was part time, so it was really like 4 to 5 hours a day. And by the time I got out, I was barely moving because the pressure and the pain was that bad. I was in where their safety basically, and they have like medical professionals there, or that um, they can like help you with different things if something happens or whatever. They're there. Well, they had this special wrap that they wrap my ankle with every day and my knee, because it just got to the point where I just couldn't do it anymore without that wrap. Well, then that's what led into the surgeries, and we had this surgery, and I'm like, okay, the ankle didn't get taken care of. It was we now I didn't know that the ankle problem was a separate issue, which it turned out to be. So we did this first surgery, and I'm like, okay, you go down the line, it's like something's not working here. And so I kind of went back to the doctor and I said, hey, I'm still having a problem. I'm still not moving very well. And so he's like, you know what? Let's do another MRI, but this time let's MRI your ankle and see what's going on. Um, and so short time after that, I did the MRI of the ankle, and then went back to see it. Well, when I went to the follow up appointment, they told me, hey, everything is good from our eyes that we see on the MRI. We're going to send you to pain management and see if pain management can do anything. At this point, I was like, having gone through some different hoops and all the stuff that I've gone through, the tests and the physical therapy and the medication and stuff like that, I was getting a little frustrated, and I was a little, because I was getting down. I'm like, I'm young. I should be playing softball and stuff like this. And this stuff is slowly getting taken away from me, the softball and, like you said, the media stuff. And I'm starting to feel more pain even doing that, sitting down. And so I was getting a little bit more frustrated. I'm like, okay, I don't want to just manage the pain. I want to fix this pain. So I took the MRI report from this doctor, this orthopedic, and I went to another doctor who was a foot ankle specialist because that's the main area that we were looking at that point. And I showed him the MRI report from this other doctor, and he said that the MRI report clearly stated that there were 2 torn ligaments in my ankle and that it needed surgery. So I was kind of confused as to, I'm like, so why would this one doctor tell me everything was good, and he didn't have an answer. He's like, I can't tell you that, but he's like, anybody that studied ankles, especially like an orthopedic, should be able to clinically look and see that this isn't right.
Yeah.
You've got torn ligaments in your ankle here.
So what happened was in this, we're not going to get into all this because we don't want to put blame, even though you could literally blame this guy. You could actually take him to court, I believe, for malpractice. But more than that, though, is like you went through all this stuff, and then this guy tells you after the fact, the first doctor should have seen something and done something different. And did this other doctor actually say it could have been fixed the first time?
Yeah.
Or did I
Yeah,
miss
he
that?
said
Yeah,
he said that goes back to that line. He said anybody who has studied ankles should be able to just look at this, move your ankle around and say, "Hey, something's not right here. There's some torn ligaments."
yeah,
And he looked at the MRI. He wanted to see the MRI report so he didn't have to do his own MRI because it
right.
was very recent that I had just gotten it. And he said, "Let me look at this one." He says he looked at it. He said, "This wording clearly states that there's ligaments that are torn in your ankle,
Hmm,
and now you've been walking on it for so long, and then you went through all the
right.
MRI stuff, and you're walking on it more, which is not helping the situation." So
So basically, what's happened here is you went into this thing thinking it was going to fix it. There
mhm.
was a second doctor that said it should have been fixed, and now it hasn't. So you've been through all this surgery and all this thing with the hope and the anticipation you're going to get back to your normal life. Like you
Yeah.
said, you're young. You shouldn't be having to give up all this stuff. So now you're at a situation where it wasn't fixed. It's only getting worse. And then what did this second doctor say your prospects were after that?
Well, he did the surgery. He did the ankle reconstruction surgery, as they call it. And things started to get better there um, with the ankle, at least for a short time. Um, the only problem was the that brought basically the other problem that was kind of put on the back burner because of the ankle pain, which was still that nerve, that pinched nerve that was up top by the knee. That started to come back into play more and more. So I'm like, okay, this is it. I had this surgery, the ankle surgery, and then I went through, healed up from that, and then I'm like, something's still not right here. Like I'm still having this nerve stuff that I was having, and now it's shooting. The only problem is now it's shooting down the leg, so it's shooting from below the knee all the way down into the ankle this time, and um, so at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to go back to the doctors now. I'm going back to, at this point, obviously, I wasn't going back to that same orthopedic. I went back to orthopedic after orthopedic after orthopedic for the next couple of years. Probably I was flying through trying to find um, somebody that could tell me what was going on, and they all kind of had the same answer. Like there's some nerve pain here, but we don't fully exactly know. I wound back up with pain management again, and pain management this time they had a little device that they recommended, which is the neurostimulator that they can put in your back, which can kind of like, oh, you're going to have this pain, but the neurostimulator can take your pain and kind of trick your brain to where your pain goes away basically. The only problem was the insurance wasn't going to cover, the insurance I had did not cover it, and the piece alone without the surgery was $100,000. And I'm like, yeah, that's not happening. And so I was like, that's not going to work. So they started to put me on um, like nerve medication, the strong stuff like Lyrica and gabapentin, some of the stronger nerve medications. And after a couple different doses, they kept upping the dosage. And so we're still going through this. It was about 2 years and about 8 months before I found a doctor that actually knew what was going on. So uh, I was with the orthopedic, and then I went to pain management. And from pain management, they sent me to a doctor that's actually a plastic surgeon. And I was like, oh, that's a little weird. um, but come to find out, the plastic surgeon actually was more of an expert in this type of nerve injury that I had than anybody else that I had seen so far up to this time.
Okay, so I heard you say before, at least in the green room here, which is neither green nor a room. We were just talking before we recorded,
Yeah.
but you talked about, hey, look, I when they mention pain management, that's not what I'm looking for. I
Yeah.
don't want to have pain management. I want the pain to go away.
Yeah.
So everything you've done up until this point, you thought would be okay, but then you started getting into this where the professionals were telling you, well, your only hope here is just to make so that you can live with it and live with less pain. And there's no way those meds are going to be not going to have side effects. So now you're in management again. But this plastic surgeon, did he give you a little bit of hope?
He did actually. I had been recommended a couple times throughout that process to a doctor in St. Louis. She's like the number one doctor to deal with this specific nerve injury that I had. And I'm like, obviously that wasn't going to be able to with like insurance. And then you leave the state, you don't have state insurance or whatever. You don't have the right insurance that you need. And so obviously that wasn't going to be able to happen. And so I just took my chances with what this pain management doctor sent me to. He said, "Hey, this guy's a good doctor. He's very well uh, reputable." And so I'm like, okay, let's go see this doctor, see what he says. And he's a hand and perennial nerve specialty, or specialty. And so I get in and I meet with him, and the scar that I had from my first knee surgery went from below the knee, kind of up a few inches above the knee on the side of the leg. And he kind of looked at it, and he instantly just shook his head, and he just shook his head no, because he knew exactly what had happened. He knew what the doctor had done. Come to find out, this doctor that I was seeing had trained and studied under that very specific doctor in St. Louis that I was recommended to. And I was like, wow, what are the odds of that? But he kind of knew. He looked instantly at the leg, and he kind of shook his head because he knew exactly what had happened. It wasn't the first time he'd seen a surgery like that be screwed up. And so from there, he kind of went in. He did another nerve block. This time he did a nerve block in two different areas of the leg. He did it up in the knee, the same area where the first doctor did it, and he did it just a little bit below, kind of in between, like the shin area and the in between the knee and like the ankle where the shin area is. And that's where he found the big problem, the one that was there 2 years ago or almost 3 years ago, that should have been taken care of the first time. That the doctor who sent me away, even though I had the torn ligaments, they completely passed over that and didn't even check that section. So for now 2 years and 8 months, that whole pinched nerve is just getting worse and worse and worse, and it's getting even more pinched. And so that's where my huge problem was, and that's where it all started with the nerve damage.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, the first doctor should have not only diagnosed it correctly, but should have fixed it. But because of what they did, didn't they tell you that had it been done correctly, you wouldn't have been seeing these people? But that first doctor actually caused all your problems, even to the point where it couldn't be fixed the way they thought. Am I right on
Yeah,
this?
it seems like so if the first doctor had, and like been more alert basically, or
Mhm.
been less negligent to what the real problem was, I may not be sitting here today with the problems that I had in the story that I have now. It
Right.
would have been
So
fixed eventually, or it would have been
right.
fixed properly the first time.
What I'm getting to is, see, we can talk about the physical part all the time, but I'm talking about the mental and spiritual
Mhm.
part. And so your emotions are being yanked up one side and down the other, and you're
Yeah,
going from extreme hope to extreme despair. That people don't understand that when you have your hopes set so high and then you go into a surgery, which is nothing to sneeze at, and then you come out of the surgery and that not only did it not work, it made things worse. That takes a mental toll on somebody because you keep thinking it's never going to get better. I mean, people
yeah,
that are listening to this, they know exactly what I'm talking about. They keep thinking that something's going to be taken care of, and then they get their hopes up high, and then they're dashed, and then they're more depressed than when they went in. And then you go to these other doctors, and they're all talking about, well, if this person had done this right, you wouldn't be doing this. And so then you're probably sitting there going, well, can you give me any kind of hope? Can you fix this? So you went through all these different journeys. You got this thing in your back with dealing with the pain or trying to fake your mind out for the pain. It's not working. They've set it up to the highest level and it's not working. I walked with you through this whole thing.
yeah,
I remember talking to you after the surgeries and going, okay. And in my mind, I'm going, great. He's finally got it fixed. He's going to be able to do this. And that point never seemed to come.
yeah. I
It
kind of,
just,
I kind of had that same, I kind of had that same thought. Oh, well, good. This guy knows what he's doing. This,
right,
this guy
right,
that I found, the plastic surgeon, he knows what he's doing. He actually went in and fixed. So he did the main surgery to do that real bad part of the nerve that was
hmm,
damaged. And then what he did was he also went back up to the first where the first surgery was done, where the first doctor
right.
did, and um, found that this is where I really knew that there was a problem, and this doctor did not do what he needed to do because the second doctor that actually knew what he was doing with the nerve went back up and had to
Right.
refix what the first doctor did. And
Right.
he comes up to me, or I'm sitting in his office after the surgery, and he's like, I can tell you, he's like, I can tell you this. He's like, I can't tell you what he did. I wasn't there. But he's like, being in your leg and seeing what happened, he's like, I can tell you he didn't do what he needed to do. And that was to fix the problem.
Right, but not only did he not fix the problem, it made it worse.
Yeah,
And
and he's like, and the doctor said, he's like, and now you've been bouncing around for 2 years, almost 3 years now, with this nerve pinched, and it's damaging the nerve more and more and more, and
so
it's
everything's
squeezing the
got
nerve
worse.
more. So
S
everything just got worse. So
Right, so not only did you have your emotions high and then low and then high and then low and then your expectations completely dashed. I like I said before, we were walking through this thing. I wanted you to get back on the softball field. I wanted you to go ahead and be able to do the things. You couldn't even do some of the things you were doing with the media ministry. You couldn't sit on a camera for an hour.
yeah,
It's like, and now there were worse things going on besides that because you started falling because the leg gave out. Am I correct?
yeah, yeah. The nerve just got to be so weak. And over time, it's like the doctor that had done the surgery to fix the problem, he had done everything he can do. The only problem was the nerve was so damaged that it just, I mean, it became, it's weird with nerve surgeries. It's not like you can do a surgery to replace the nerve. You can do heart transplants and lung transplants and different things like that. It's the nerve is different. You can't. There's no surgery that they can do to fix the nerve, and unfortunately, it just keeps getting more damaged and damaged. And once it's damaged, it's just like a downhill battle. So, like you were saying though, with the emotions, I mean, my emotions at this point, I was there. The frustration turned to bitterness because that first doctor could have prevented all of this, so there was some bitterness. Hey, now I can't play softball anymore. I'm young yet, I'm still in my 20s, and now I can't play softball, the thing I love to do anymore. I can't work anymore. I got to be where now I'm on disability, and disability got brought into it, so there was some depression through there. I mean, I can tell you the emotions have been crazy strong. I mean, I'd be sitting there at home just in agonizing pain, and it sucked for my family to sit there and see this, because of this situation and the neglect from the doctor, or um, the screw up that had happened. And now my family has to see me through this every single day, and I can't imagine, what my parents, my mom from a distance, and even my dad, who was there every day, my stepmom and my brother, and all of them had to see, every day, because obviously they've been with me through it too, um, and I can't understand what my dad and my mom felt, you know, like seeing their son go through this, and there's nothing they can do about it, because there's times I look at my dad, I'm like, I can't take this anymore. I can't take this pain. And it's bad enough that where, certain thoughts get in your head, like, if I got hit by a truck, I wouldn't even mind because I'd be out of the pain. So, I mean, it got to some serious thoughts, I never had the thought of like, okay, I'm going to do this now and I'm going to end it all, because I still had hope with Jesus through it all, that there's got to be a plan. I was telling myself there's got to be something. There's got to be a reason that this happened, and I'm just waiting to see if something happens. But through it all, even through waiting and knowing that Jesus is there walking with you through it, there's still these bitter feelings towards the doctor. And, oh well, if you hadn't screwed up, I wouldn't be in this situation right now.
Yeah, I mean, some of the toughest things that can happen to us is we have time to think. If you
Hmm.
had been able to be at a job, you could be occupied there, but here you are stuck at home. You can't do much of anything. You're not sure you can walk. You've fallen down there. But now, some people don't know this, but there were many times I'd walk into that church and they would tell me, "Hey, Josh fell again today." And
Hmm.
it's like you can't that's it, and I would just sit back and I would go, and even though I couldn't do anything about it, I mean, obviously I could pray about it. I don't want
Yeah.
to diminish that, but
Yeah.
it's like, okay, you pray, but then, okay, God, what are you going to do to answer that prayer? And it just got to a point where I didn't want to hear that you couldn't stand on your leg anymore. I didn't want to hear that you were falling down.
Yeah.
So
It was.
you got to a point where there was no light at the end of the tunnel. If there was a light at the end of the tunnel, it seemed like it was a train coming at you. And you
Hmm.
said you went to some dark places. A lot of people do that.
Yeah.
But the only thing that kept you from going to a darker place was that you knew that God had something for this. So I want to make sure everybody knows there's an undercurrent of hope and
Yeah.
stability and peace that doesn't seem to, it's like the scripture says, a peace that passes understanding. You
Yeah.
had a peace, but there was no your situation, your life situation didn't support it.
Yeah.
But that's,
Well,
if I'm hearing this correctly, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that kept you from doing the dark things, did it not?
oh yeah. Oh, for sure. And I mean, I'd had conversations. I remember conversations I've had with you. Hey, can you pray for this specific thing? And you said, yeah. He's like, when we pray, let's pray for a peace that passes all of our human understanding, because there's not one of us that understands it. I don't understand it, or I didn't at the time, and my parents didn't understand it. My family didn't understand it. People at church, I mean, and we go to a church with so many people, and there's been hundreds and hundreds of people that have followed my journey over the last 13 years. And there's been thousands, I would say probably thousands of prayers that have been prayed, in my situation. And I'd say the biggest thing is pray for peace. And the peace worked, because, I'm still sitting here today. So,
Right. And so what I wanted to get people to know, because there's so many different takeaways for this. I mean, when we talked about doing this interview, you wanted to do this interview because you knew there were people that were going through what you went through, and maybe
yeah,
even what you're going through now, that need to hear it. That's the power of your testimony. We overcome by the blood of the lamb and the power of our testimony. And so it's the power of your testimony that you wanted to get out there. And so, but you didn't have the testimony you wanted to have until more recently. So now we're going to go back. We're going to go into the future here. When I don't know if it's this doctor from St. Louis or who it was that basically laid out your options. And they gave you two options. One that you kind of said, I don't want to do that. So tell us just a little bit about that.
yeah, there was, well, I had asked this doctor, I said, what happens, I said, with all the information that he had given me, with there's no surgery that can fix this. I said, what are the options, or what are the likelihood, possibilities that somewhere down the line it may lead to leg amputation, you know? And he kind of just looked at me, said, it's a very real possibility. He said, at some point, excuse me, he said, some point the leg is going to become useless, and once that nerve goes completely dead, he said the leg could eventually just hang there, and it's a weird thing. So I'm like, at that moment in my head, I started getting it down the line, like, okay, this is a very real possibility here, probably in the not too distant future. And so I started to, I guess, slowly mentally prepare my mind that this could be the possibility, and in that way, there were some prayers like, God, if this is the possibility, I'm gonna need you to walk with me through it, because by myself I'm not strong enough to handle this. Amputation is a very extreme, scary word, you know and it is for anybody in any situation. You're basically taking a part of your body, and it's going bye bye, and so I'm sitting there, like, I slowly started to prepare for it. And after a while, I was this is going to sound weird, but I was kind of longing for it, you know just to be out of the pain, because I had talked to some doctors that, the door had been kind of closed, in some doctors' views, because when I would go to the doctor, it started to pick up. And after this doctor could know, the doctor that did surgery, I walked in one day, and he came into the room, and he was shaking his head. He's like, "I'm sorry." He's like, "I've got no more." He's like, "My magic whiteboard that's full of answers is full." He's like, "I've got nothing more I can do for you," and at that point I kind of had to accept for a minute that there was nothing anybody could do. But then something was urging me, within the last couple of years or something, like, there's got to be something there has to be something in here that somebody can do. And I started looking more and more towards amputation. Well, doctors here, a neurologist here, neurologist there, different doctors. I even went up to Mayo Clinic in Rochester, to see a neurologist, and they kind of all had the same conclusion. They could see what they called like a healthy leg. I could move the leg, I could move the ankle, I could do everything. The only problem was the nerve was damaged still, and the nerve was getting worse. And it's like the nervous system of a computer. If it crashes, everything's going down. It was like that with my ankle and my knee. If the nerve was damaged, so where everything looked good with the muscles and the tendons and everything there, it was the nerve that was throwing everything off. It was the nerve that was throwing the stuff off at church. When I'd get into the media room, like you said, I've fallen at church. They tell you Josh fell again. Well, I'd have it. It was crazy. I'd have people come into the media room to help me up off the floor because I had just fallen. That's what the doctors couldn't see every day. The doctors could see what they called the healthy leg, because I could still move it.
Yeah, and so I can tell you that, you had mentioned amputation, and I knew how tough that was going to be for you. And there was nothing really, but you got to a point where it's like, it's either I do this or I live with the pain. And so you knew you couldn't live with the pain. You knew you couldn't live with what you were going through. You wanted a life that was different, and yet nobody else, like you said, the magic whiteboard had all these answers, but none of them were going to work, no matter whatever else. And then you've got doctors saying, well, everything else is healthy about your leg, but that misses the point. You have
Yeah,
something that's not allowing you to walk. And so we would, around church, we were just always wondering, what's going to happen next. You came down the altar, we prayed for you all the time, but
yeah,
at some point, and this is in my thinking, okay, maybe I told you this, but I actually started talking to you about maybe you ought to think about amputation. I don't know if you remember
yeah,
me
yeah.
saying that, I think maybe this is it. You might have
Yeah,
to prepare yourself for this. Are you ready to take that step?
Yeah.
because it was one of those things where it's like, this is it. But I also understood the hesitancy with going, well, how am I going to live without that leg? How am I going to live without this? How am I going to live with a prosthetic on my leg? You had to get to that point where you said, okay, I'm going to do this. Can
Yeah.
you tell me, it was there a moment where you went, I got to do this?
Yeah, well, it's funny you should say that because yeah, I remember that conversation, and it got to a point where really quickly, I'd say it ramped up. Like, okay, I literally can't take this pain anymore. I have to pursue this some more. So some time had come. It was like 2 years in between when I went to Mayo Clinic the first time, um, and then I had just gone back to Mayo Clinic. Recently this year. It's a funny story of how it all came about. We were praying again, and it's like my stepmom. We were all in the living room real quick, and I had a appointment scheduled with a general surgeon from Mayo Clinic. I kind of went through, gave him my whole medical history, gave him all the records and stuff like this, and they kind of told him my story, and they narrowed it down to a specific doctor that would see me if they could do anything. So we were in our living room one night praying. This was 4 days before I had the virtual appointment, and my stepmom, she said a very specific prayer: God, every door has been closed. God, if this is your purpose, if this is your plan for Josh's life, then God put a doctor in our path that'll do it. And 4 days later, I met with that doctor through Zoom. And after about a 45-minute conversation, she had spent 45 minutes before our meeting, even looking over my medical stuff. And about 45 minutes after that, from when the appointment was on, she's like, I'll do it. She's like, it may go against everything doctors stand for to do what some doctors label as a healthy leg without being like severe trauma. But she's like, I'll tell you, she's like, you're not the first one to come to me and ask for your life back, you know? And so she's like, so I'm willing to do it. At that point, at that moment, I took the biggest deep breath I've taken in a long time because I knew, I said, okay, there's finally some relief coming. And then the emotions really started to hit. Like, I wasn't even worried about, like, I had a peace, like we had been prayed for, a peace that passes all understanding, because I had mentally prepared myself for it, that it'd be coming, but then there was a different emotion because it's actually happening now.
So that was your moment. Okay. So you actually got to a place where you said, you know what, you took that deep breath. And I think, are you telling me that at that moment you're saying, let's do it?
Yeah, at that point, I'm like, it was like, let's do it. Cause and kind of like a let's do it and finally moment. Like,
Hmm.
because we were hoping, we were pretty sure that it would take the pain away. We were really hoping it would. At least I was more sure, like, yeah, this is gonna happen. Um, it's gonna take the pain away. And so I was just like, finally, let's just do it. It got to the point where I'm like, and like I said, it's an extreme word, but then I could tell people at church, and tell you, and I believe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but your reaction was kind of like the finally, like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
it's extreme, but this is gonna be good. You need this.
Right. Now, I remember that conversation. See, this is the interesting thing. I interview people that I don't know. I,
Yeah.
I've been with this guy the whole time, and we've been going back and forth. And I've always wanted you. There was one time I was mad at you because you were directing a service and you weren't willing to go down to the altar to pray. And I said, "No, you get down there. I'll take
Oh
your
yeah.
camera." I said, "You
Yeah.
need to get down there and pray."
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of relationship we have. I basically said, "Look, you got to do this." And
Yeah.
so I encouraged you. And then when I found out, I mean, some people, they think, you find out, oh man, my friend's gonna lose his leg, and everybody's kind of go, oh man, I was like, no, that's not what I felt. I'll tell you right now, I was exactly like, if it gets him back to a somewhat close to normal life without pain, he needs to do it. And that's why I
Yeah.
encouraged you and I prayed for you. And so now you schedule the surgery. All this
Mhm.
stuff's out there. We got a specific date. And then give us like a little bit of a process between now that you said we're pulling the trigger, it's going to happen. How did you get yourself ready for that?
Um, well, it was probably maybe a week or two. I think it was maybe a week to a week and a half from the time that I found out that she would do it for insurance to come through. Then we set a date that was about a week out or something like that. So it was a couple of weeks in between the time that she said she would do it to the time that it happened. And in that point, there's a lot of prayer, like, God, God, I mean, you could be this Christian person and you're still going to have this fear, so there was a little bit of fear there, like, oh, okay. But then I just did everything I could to make myself as comfortable with the situation, to go into that hospital with as much peace as I could have. And so there was a lot of praying that God would give me a peace about this situation. Basically I had to learn, um like, okay, the door was open, God opened the door and put that doctor there, you're going to trust him, are you going to trust the process now? So it's kind of like, okay, God, you opened the door, now I'm going to trust you. But with that trust, I need a peace that everything is going to go good. And so from the time that I had that call, that meeting with the doctor at my house, we went up to La Crosse, up north, where Mayo Clinic is at, one of the clinics where that was happening. And from that time there to the time that they rolled me back into the OR, there was a piece that I couldn't imagine, because I'm like, I didn't know I could have this much peace, especially with because I had surgeries before. I mean, this was the 10th surgery, in 13 years. So I'm like, surgery wasn't anything for me. It's like nothing new. It's like I'm not going in nervous, from surgery. It was the subject of the surgery. So that's warranted for a little bit of anxiety. So and thankfully through that time the anxiety was down. It was more relief, which I think was able to give me more of a peace. I said there was one thing that I was worried about anxiety wise through this whole thing, from the time I figured out that it was going to happen. And I said, what's my reaction going to be when I wake up in recovery, having gone in with 2 full limbs, and I'm coming out with half my leg gone? And that's the part I was worried about. But I remember waking up in the recovery room, and I was on so much strong medication. It wasn't even, I mean, it's not even funny. It's crazy strong medication. But I remember waking up and I kind of looked down and I looked at the leg and I'm like, And then I put my head back down because I had literally just come out of the anesthesia. So it wasn't like a freak out thing, like, oh my gosh, this is really real. Like, I knew it was real, but there was still a piece on top of it being real.
Wow. And I remember when they had it all scheduled, we talked, and you said it's real. It's going to happen. I'm having
Yeah.
a hard time figuring it out, but God worked with you through this whole thing. And I seem to think there was a scripture that you kind of. I'm going to put it up here anyway because I know you
Yeah.
know what it is because you gave it to me. It's this
Yeah.
Proverbs 3:5-6. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Do you realize the irony in that scripture?
Well, see, I think I do. I think I do more now over the last little bit
Yeah.
of the
So it's
situation.
like,
It's like,
yeah.
because that scripture, it hits from the time that I first started having surgery, to
Hmm.
the doctor that screwed everything up, to the process, and now having had the amputation. Um, and it's funny we should bring up this one because we have a friend, Mike Omo, who you had on your podcast. He kind of gave me this verse. One day we were talking because I could look to him for encouragement. He just had a major surgery too,
Well, yeah.
and
So if you want to know what it is, Mike Omo had a double lung transplant just recently, and he was facing the prospect of either there was no choice. He was either going to die or get this lung transplant. So a little bit though. So he gave you the scripture, right?
Yeah, we would kind of talk to each other and try to encourage each other through our situations. We both have a journey, we both have a story, um, and so it was kind of nice to kind of feed off of each other. He kind of gave me this one. I'm like, that's pretty good because that fits very well with my situation. And then when it came to me having the amputation, and I knew at this point I'm getting a prosthetic leg. Well, the people from the limb lab place that do the prosthetic said I'd seen different style legs, and I'm like, hey, can I put picture on this leg? And he said, yeah, you can put anything on it you want. And so I'm like, I was kind of toying with the what to put on it, and do I want to put a Bible verse on it, or do I want to put like a picture of like a character or something on it? My 7-year-old sister thought I should put the Hulk on it, which is kind of funny, but she's like, you should put the Hulk on it. I'm like, well, we'll see. But then I'm like, something was pushing me towards doing like a Bible verse. And so I literally was just typing in encouraging Bible verses or something like that one day. And the very first verse that popped up was a verse. I think we have it too. It's the John 16:33 that says, I have told you these things so that you will have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And instantly that hit. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably one of the most fitting ones for my situation. And I decided right then and there, I'm like, that's the verse I want. And so I know this guy, he does a podcast, and he does different AI stuff that he can create thumbnails and stuff.
Yes,
I went to Yeah,
that was
so
me.
that's when
I did that.
that's when I came to you and said, hey, can we make this?
Hmm.
And I didn't give you a picture of it, but I have pictures of what the leg looks like, and it's that verse that's actually printed on there,
Yeah.
which is kind of a nice thing that can be kind of a tool to help tell my story. Because now, since this has happened, I'm like, I've kind of got a new outlook on things. I've got a new outlook
Hmm.
for my story. There's a story that I have. There's a lot of people in this world that have pain, and it's chronic pain. It can be mental pain, it can be physical pain. In some ways it can be spiritual pain. All pain is, pain is pain. It just comes in different forms. And now, having had the physical pain that I've had for 13 years, you know, I have a story that I can tell. And with that verse, that can be a huge, huge, you know, step towards my story. I said, I'd ask God, I'd say, God, what's the point? There's got to be a point to this. I mean, I can't imagine you have me be in pain this long for just the heck of it. And, I got so many different things from people at the church. And one guy specific from church came up to me. We were having church in the gym, and he gave me a big old hug, and he said, he's like, I can't tell you how encouraging your story has been, and how encouraging you are, and how much of an inspiration you are, because you're here, you're back at that media table, or back in that media room every single week, and you're fighting through it. I mean, it got to a point where I was back there, I couldn't hide the pain anymore. I tried to hide it for years, but as like you said, you've seen it there, I just couldn't hide it anymore. And he's like, you're an inspiration. You keep going. He's like, that's inspiring. And it kind of clicked, like, okay, that's what this is for. That this is meant for me to inspire somebody. And I never thought I could. I didn't think I could be an inspiration to people. And it's like,
Hmm.
God's going to use this to be an inspiring tool that I have. And I said, the doctors, they started to hear about Jesus, because I said, you know, I would tell the doctor, whether it's a doctor, or physical therapist, or whoever's taking like blood work or whatever. I said, maybe God's going to use this. I said, God's got this. He's had this story in his hands. I said, maybe God's going to use this, and maybe I can talk somebody off a bridge one day. Somebody up there with chronic pain, that's had pain for years, and they're just ready to give up. Because I can understand them wanting to give up with the pain. And I said, maybe God's going to use use this pain to have me talk somebody off a bridge. And, they've tried drugs, they've tried the alcohol, they've tried pills, they've tried everything that they can do to fill that void or fill that pain, and it's led him to the bridge. And maybe I can show up and with my prosthetic leg and show him Jesus and talk him off.
Hmm. Yeah, that is exactly it, and that's something that a lot of people don't understand. Um, all throughout this whole thing, Josh has told me he wants God to use him through it, and that's exactly what's happening right now. God is using him through this. But there's a moment here; it's a pretty big moment. He went on a vacation to Las Vegas with some friends. I'm going to
Yeah,
put a picture up here and let them see this. And I'm going to put us side by side with it so we can actually talk about it here. Tell us what
yeah.
about this moment right here.
This was something. So it was me, my brother, and a couple friends of ours, and we had a vacation plan for a while. Even before I think it was before we knew that I was going to Vegas. Or having the amputation, we had a trip to go to Vegas, just hang out, see the sights and stuff like that. Well, we actually flew out. I had the amputation on June 27th of this year. And what I didn't realize at the time, we flew out October 27th, which was exactly 4 months to the day of surgery. And the very next day we took this. So it was 4 months in one day. We decided, hey, let's go do some top golf. Let's see how this is going to work. I had no idea how it was going to go, if it was going to be a dumpster fire, if it was going to be pretty good. So I get up there and I start swinging. And if you can see kind of out towards the back end there, I was like kind of pointing like they could actually see where I'm pointing. But out back there, that's about 200 yards out where those screens are. And I get up there and I hit the screens, I don't know, 5-6 times. I mean, and I started driving the ball 200 yards at will and pain free for the first time in years. I don't even know how long. And the balance was there, the power was there, the strength was there. It was phenomenal. I mean, I could stand there. You can look at the legs. I'm kind of standing at an angle, but that's where I got my balance, and I'm sitting there swinging pain free for the first time in 8 years or more. And the emotion hit me. My brother called my dad on video chat back at the house, and my dad's just sitting there in tears. He's like, "Do you realize what just happened?" And at the moment, I didn't. I just realized, hey, I'm doing this pain free for the first time in years. I get back over to where the couches and stuff are, and emotion just hit me so hard. I mean, I started just bawling. I didn't realize it was coming. I didn't know it. Just it hit me when he said, "Do you realize what had happened? What just happened there?" And so that was the biggest victory I've had in many, many years.
Hmm.
And that just happened recently at the end of October. So I'm like, God's taken, the broken part and where he's made the story that I have where, yeah, maybe I can talk somebody off a bridge, but he's given me these victories where I can slowly get back into, playing sports and different things like like that. And eventually maybe even playing softball again, And I recently went another story real quick. I went up to lacrosse again to get the prosthetic that I have, and they asked if I would come back up there because they were about to do some marketing and stuff and some more video stuff for their for like their social media and their website, and they wanted to interview me. They're like, "Your story is fascinating. You've got 13 years that you've dealt with this, multiple surgeries, and you're still here and you're positive and you have this attitude like, wow, I'm going to change, lives through this when it's not really me, but my story, Jesus is changing lives through me." And so I said, yeah, I'll come back up because they asked, like, would you come up and kind of tell your story? And I said, yeah, but I told them beforehand, I said, guys, Jesus is going to be the center of my story. I'll make this documentary or whatever. It's going to have Jesus in it because I'm sitting here today talking to you guys because Jesus is the center of this story. And they said, that's cool. They said, go on and tell your story. And so I get up there asking me different questions, and I told him that story about, talking somebody off a bridge. And I said, if my words can change one heart, I said, if my words can inspire one person and lead them to Jesus, I said it was all worth it, you know. And it's cool part of the story was the guy that was interviewing me. His wife was sitting behind him on a bench just to the left of us, and I could tell, I could tell it was hitting her because as I'm saying these words, she's sitting there just bawling. I could see. I kind of glanced over and saw it, and she's just wiping tears throughout her eyes the entire interview. And then that's when it really hit. Okay, there's a purpose in this. There's a purpose in this story, and this story has to get out because after we were done, we were kind of walking up towards the front of the area that I was at doing the interview, and she said, "I got to tell you real quick." She said, "You said in that interview, if your words could touch somebody, if your story can inspire anybody, it was all worth it." She's like, "I got to tell you, you got me." And I kind of at that point I'm like, okay, now there's a whole new purpose for this.
Right. I mean, you are literally, pardon the pun, a walking miracle.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you literally are. You, I guess I got to take this thing down here. I want just the two of us
who,
here. I'll
who,
eventually figure it
who,
out.
who engineers these
Who
things?
engineers these things?
So.
Who is this joker that's engineering now in your place? Now you see why I need him so much.
Yeah.
But that's exactly it, though, Josh. I mean,
Yeah.
when we talked about this, we wanted you to be able to tell people your story and not be ashamed of the leg. I remember there was one time when you were walking up to us, and there was a couple there that did not. They knew you, but they didn't know your journey.
Mm.
And I mentioned your leg, and you showed, and you were just like, "Hey, I'll pull my pant leg up," and showed them there, and they were like, "Oh my goodness!" They were like, "I." How sad this story. And I went, "Oh, you
Yeah.
guys don't understand. He's way beyond that. He's using it. He's proud that God is using him this way." And
Yeah.
I had to actually get them to think that way, but that's the way
Yeah.
you are. You're not afraid to show it.
Yeah.
And of course the prosthetic has a lion on the front, and then it has those
Oh yeah.
scriptures on
Yeah.
the back.
Yeah.
And if a good engineer would have had those pictures ready, but anyway, so
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I guess the point is really this, and you made it beautifully, is that everybody that talked to you in the hospitals, everything, they knew right off the bat that you had a peace and that you wanted
Yeah.
God to use you. And Josh, what you probably know, but maybe they weren't saying it, not everybody comes in there like that, and not everybody leaves like that. You
Yeah.
were different.
I'm,
You had a life that was different, and that's the biggest thing that people should be able to take from this is that you are trying to make a difference after God made a difference in your life.
Yeah, exactly. I was in the hospital for 8 days that it happened. I stayed up north with my brother. He lives up there. So I was in the hospital for eight
I think
days.
we got a picture of you here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Here we
that
go.
was literally, I mean, that was within 3 hours of me having the surgery. That was just after I had woken up and they brought me into the room. And then that was as family had just come in, they had taken that picture. But they had commented, several times like, "Wow, you were so positive through this all." Because one of the nurses was telling me, he's like, "I've seen people come through and it breaks them, and they have nothing left to live for." And I'm like, "See, that killed me." I'm like, there's more and more stories where I see the people that just can't take it anymore, and they get put in a situation like this with that picture, and they decide that ending it all is going to be so much better. And I'm like, no, that's where Jesus is at. I'm like, if I can, they're like I said, pain is pain. You can have pain in different ways. There's been people struggling with pain that I can't understand, where I had this pain that they can't understand. Pain is pain. And I'm like, and if I can show them Jesus through the pain, then maybe it can keep them from ending it all. Now that's become my biggest desire, is to stop seeing these people, whether they're my age, whether they're your age, in between, that there's hope. There's hope through the pain, and I've had plenty of the pain to see that pain is no joke. But when you have Jesus, the guy that was it's funny, the guy that was interviewing me up in lacrosse, he said, what would you say to somebody, that isn't, as he said, religious, that doesn't have the faith that you have? And I said, maybe hopefully one day you can come to know Jesus, like I know Jesus. But I said, in the same way, I said, wake up every morning, find something positive to go on. I said, the world's never going to stop hitting. I said, it'll never stop knocking you down. Get up, give the world a black eye, and move forward.
Wow. That's pretty powerful there. We don't need that leg up there anymore because you're way past that. Um, that when you told me that line, when you said you told him that, it's like, life's going to come at you, it's going to knock you down. Get back up and give life a black eye. That I was
Well,
like, dude.
I was like, I prayed beforehand, before that interview. I
Oh,
prayed. I'm like, God, you're gonna have to speak through me, because I'm
yeah.
not smart enough to say some of this. And I'm like, I said that, and then
Mm,
I realized what I said, and I'm like, okay, God, you really spoke through me,
yeah.
because I'm like, but if that's if that's one of the specific lines that's gonna help somebody
Yeah.
that isn't a Christian person, if that's gonna help them get there and maybe one day see Jesus, then I'll say it every
Mm.
day.
Okay. And I I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to interview maybe a year from now, and we'll see how things are going. But
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, if people that are listening to this right now, you've heard a man who had to deal with chronic pain, was ready to just take his life, and yet God said, "No, no, no, no. We'll turn this into something good," and that's what He's doing right now. And so, Josh, I want you to take a little bit of take a few minutes here, and tell people, give a message directly to them. Look into that camera and say, if you're in my position, what they should do, and then if you're okay with it, close us in prayer. You
Okay.
okay with
Sounds
that?
good. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I can say, if you are going through this, if there's a pain that you're going through, whether chronic physical pain, mental pain, I say reach out to somebody. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say I've had to have some therapy through it all. There's people out there that can help you through it all. Whether it's the physical pain, mental pain, spiritual pain, whatever it is. Just the thing that I've been longing to tell people is, don't give up. There's hope. There's hope through Jesus. Whether you may not know Jesus the way I know Jesus, but if you knew Jesus the way I know Jesus, there's hope. And so, maybe somebody's out there that's ready to see this, that is thinking about it, and they're close to giving up and just ending it all. Hopefully my words today can kind of dissuade you from fully giving up. I mean, if I can go from where I was, with the bitterness and the anger towards that doctor and not knowing, to having God open the doors, and I'm, trusting in the Lord with all my heart, even though I don't understand it. Um, I mean, my hope and encouragement to you is just keep going, fight. You're here for a reason. God's got you on this planet for a purpose. And so I can pray with you guys to kind of find that peace, the peace that passes all understanding, that I had to do. And lots of people prayed for me for peace, through it all. So let's go ahead and pray. Dear God, I thank you for today. I thank you that Dave is in my life, God, so that I can be at this point, and maybe my words can touch somebody through this podcast. I thank you for putting me in a position to give my interview, whether there's nerves or anything like that have gone on through this, God. I pray that somebody can take the words that I've said, that's gone through pain, whether it's as long as I have, not as long as I have, longer than I've gone through it, God, whatever pain that they're going through. I pray that you can take it away, God, and show them peace that passes all understanding, and they know that they can wake up every day, find something positive, give the world a black eye and everything that Satan's going to throw at them. And they say, no, I'm a child of God. You have no power over me. And that, God, you can walk with them through the pain. I pray that you just, God, make yourself real to them like you did with me through Dave and through the family and, the many, many, many friends at church that helped get me through this situation. And I pray that, they can find that peace through you, God, and that my words can change their heart and maybe change their situation forever. So God, we thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, there we go. So, yeah, just to let you know, because I like embarrassing my guests this way. I want to tell them what they thought about before. Yeah, Josh was saying like, I'm not sure if I can pray for people, but I said, Josh, you're going to do it.
I can talk to hundreds of people without a problem. I'm like, put a microphone in my hand. That's me. So, but
Well, anyway, though, so you did a really good job. And I just want to let you know, folks, the people like Josh, they're going to have testimonies. If you've got a testimony, you want to get it out there, you just send me a message, you drop me a line here, and we'll talk about it. But yeah, it says in Revelation, we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. That's how Josh overcame: the blood of the Lamb and the word of his testimony. So there we go. So anyway, well, Josh, I'll go ahead and close this thing down, but thank you. The funny thing is, I was going to say you can come back anytime, but you're going to see me at 5 tonight.
Yeah,
For the
I'll see you a
podcast.
little later. So
He's my engineer for all these other things. So
yeah,
it's kind of a twist of a phrase here, but Josh,
I'm just on this side of the camera this time.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you for joining us for another edition of God's News in the News. Got the wrong person up here. Hey, how about me? Let's take you down. Let's put me up here. I need an engineer to do this for me. You gonna help me get out of this?
I better come back quick.
You gonna do all the videos at the end for me here? Do I have to do that? You watch. He's gonna do his magic here. So anyway, though, folks, thank you for joining us once again for another edition of God's News in the News, current events, biblical perspective. We'll see you next time.